Do you think I'm in any position to give Kyler Murray some free advice?
No.
Probably not.
And that'll do it for this edition of Cardinals Underground, brought to you by Pacific Office Automation. Dani Sureck, Darren Urban, yours truly, Paulie Podcast. The folks in Calvisi Consulting, the R&D division, have determined that it would be in Kyler's best interest if he started one of these sort of online social media, submit your video rating services, specifically rated to your swing, your baseball or softball swing.
Hang on 1 second.
Send your video clip to Kyler and he'll rate it.
Are you saying you want Kyler to focus more on baseball, and you think that would bode well with Cardinals fans?
That's probably not going well.
I'm pretty sure that
because they've been pretty harsh to him about that in the past.
Just
Paul.
rating baseball swings does not violate thy contract. I don't think that violates the contract.
I'm just saying, if Kyler is doing anything in his free time other than throwing a football or stretching, it's a problem.
I'm thinking the rating service could go something like, thanks for being engaged and wanting to hear more about this. It could be, a single for a sufficient swing, a double, a triple, a homer for a great swing, a K, a strikeout for a really poor swing. Harris Johnson Jr., maybe like James Conner, who might, maybe didn't earn a single, but he gets a walk or maybe a hit by pitch. I don't know, somewhere in between.
I feel like his ratings would be he'd be a very tough rater, it sounds like.
The reason I bring this up is, did you happen to see over the weekend? I know you both are busy and you have tons of plans. You see what Travis Kelce did at the charity softball game. David Njoku, part of Tight End U, and Travis Kelce have gotten tight. And Kelce is originally from Cleveland. I did not know that. So there was a charity softball game, home run derby.
Oh, so I was going to say he proposed to Taylor Swift?
And so the person who's better known as Taylor Swift's boyfriend showed up fashionably late, grabbed a bat. I guess he played high school baseball and jacked 11 homers to win, to beat another Browns player by 1. And the swing was pretty good.
I did not see that clip. I saw a clip. There was an elderly woman who had like a bunt
Yeah, I saw
and
that.
was being escorted at a slow pace to first base. And I think it was Njoku who stood there the whole time, and milliseconds before she put her foot on the base, he tagged her out.
Oh, jeez. These NFL guys are a little too competitive at times.
It's all about the competition, Paul.
Yes, pathologically competitive at times.
It's kind of like what we do here on the Underground.
So free advice right there, which will not be adopted as usual, but I just thought it'd be a concept.
We'll have his people. We'll let his people know.
His people will talk to the people that I don't have. Anyway, Kyler has spoken. The QB has spoken. I did not realize, Darren Urban, until I read your article on azcardinals.com, the first time he's spoken since the season finale, 2023.
I mean, yeah, in a press conference setting. I mean, I think he ended up talking to somebody as a one-off, maybe right before the draft. I'm trying to remember, but it was because he was, it was one of his sponsors, and he talked. And I'm trying to remember what the circumstances are. But in terms of a regular media setting and having extensive questions being asked, no, he has not talked since after the Seattle game.
Among other things, he said there's definitely juice about this team. What else stood out? Here we go, around the horn. What stood out during the Kyler Murray press conference that sort of had you on the edge of your seat, or maybe typing furiously to tweet it out?
Well, I mean, the fact that he talked about how he feels like one of the older people now, which go to hell. But mostly, I guess I understand it. It's funny because I feel like there was a recent podcast where Dani was mentioning the fact, like, look, this guy's going into his 6th year. It's for everything we've gone through, and again, it carries over the pandemic. So there's been a lot that's gone on in the world since Kyler Murray showed up. But it is kind of weird how, man, this guy's been around a while. I mean, I think I put out the tweet. I don't even know if it was last year. It might have been last year, but when he had already played more games than both Carson Palmer and Kurt Warner had in a Cardinals uniform. I think that was early last year.
That is a mind blow.
And it just doesn't feel that way. It feels like Kurt was around for a really long time. Now, again, Kurt didn't play all the time his whole time here because he got benched for a while for Matt Leinart and got hurt a couple times. But it's really strange.
There's what he said, and then there's how he said it. When he was asked about the weapons at his disposal and whether he's been set up for this sort of success ever before in his career, top 5 run game. And he said it really reminds me of my Heisman campaign 2018. For him to even think that, for him to even have that sort of confidence that he's capable of something like that, that's just really intriguing.
I think it says a lot, and not just about the players around him. I think about, where Kyler's at mentally and the support he's clearly feeling from the top down. It's very clear the culture shift that the Cardinals had almost perfect attendance in all of these voluntary practices, and Kyler Murray was leading the charge. That's exactly what you want. Kyler talked about the importance of camaraderie and the chemistry, which has been intentional. These trips and these off-campus workouts that he's been having all offseason with his receivers, his offensive linemen. I mean, that's been intentional to really have that chemistry that transfers onto the field and create success in that way. When talking about his receivers, I mean, James Conner and everything that he means to this team, the run game, being a receiver and being challenged to be active in that a little more this year. Michael Wilson and the expectation that Kyler has for a big jump in year 2. Not because there was a lot wrong in his rookie year, just maybe feeling like the underdog a little bit, dealing with some nicks and bruises and having to miss a little bit of time his rookie year. I thought what Kyler said, though, about Greg Dortch was really intriguing, kind of made my ears perk up. Used the word unguardable and said that Dortch has the savviness and the nuance that you can't coach in a receiver. There's no question in Kyler's mind whether or not Dortch can create separation and get open. And Kyler said if Dortch were 6'3", he'd be a top 5 pick. That's pretty telling.
It's funny you talk about how he was talking, because I 100% agree with you. If this offense in particular performs like Kyler talked about them, it may be the greatest offense of all time in the NFL history. But that said, you can make arguments in different ways, again, with the nuance, but he's not just saying that guy's really good. He's not just saying Marvin Harrison's really good. He's using phrases like, Greg Dortch has got the nuance to be, one, he strikes you, and I've never really thought he wasn't intelligent, but the way he describes people, one, as a writer, I love the fact that he gives you something besides cliches, and he's gotten better about that. But again, the way he's kind of pumped up his guys, whether it's Connor or Harrison or Michael Wilson, who he said he's going to play in this league a long time, and the way he said it, that was high praise. We all want to talk about the leadership thing, but to me, that sounds like a quarterback trying to lead things. And it's different, I can't remember what Aaron Rodgers was like 10 years ago, but recent Aaron Rodgers tends to pick at some teammates once in a while, and that's how he kind of goes about it, where it feels like Kyler is about right now trying to make sure that these guys feel as good as they can about each other.
For him to try and explain to the media, but ultimately he failed because the media can't relate to what it's like to play NFL quarterback, for him to try and explain that when you're sitting there under center in the pocket and you know what's coming and you know where to go with the football, you're now playing. You're not thinking. And I think that's probably what has him excited and maybe has him thinking in grand terms and expectations, because his opinion, the way he tried to explain it, was no matter what they throw at me, I know where to go with the football.
See, I don't know. We know. Paul, you're the quarterback of this podcast. You oftentimes talk like you're not thinking, but you go right to where you need to go.
Just because there isn't a game plan here doesn't mean I can't call an audible and fill the space. Is that what you're saying? Play for the next down?
Anything.
Darren's saying I play for the next down.
I'm in a mood, Paul.
That it's So you had that, and then if you want to pick on yours truly, I did ask him about Marvin Harrison Jr. I came back to it. He already commented on it,
But he wanted to answer you better than the first question I noticed.
Well, I figured maybe the second swing, I'd either get a really good answer or I'd get jacked.
Maybe you had a better question, though.
Well, I just asked him, I said, if Marvin Harrison Jr. is that guy, what does that do for this offense? And Kyler started with the first part of the question, said he will be. he will be that guy, as in take out the if, which was really intriguing. And then he just went and talked about how it takes the entire offense to another level. And if you have a guy capable of winning one-on-ones and manipulating coverage, demanding extra coverage, how that trickles down through the rest of the offense and sort of defenses you're going to see. And then he threw in there already that even when he's not open, he's open, which is pretty remarkable for a rookie who hasn't even put on full pads yet.
It is. I don't love to do rookie expectations when they haven't stepped foot on the field. I think it is fair to say that those normal expectations don't apply to Harrison. From what we've gathered as a person, the personality, the humility, the intelligence, from what we've heard from his teammates and coaches about what he's been doing out on the practice field, it does feel similar to the feeling when DeAndre Hopkins was here. Somebody who, even when he wasn't open, was open. And on the rare chances maybe he wasn't open enough or wasn't the right move, if you've got some receivers like a Trey McBride or a Michael Wilson or a Greg Dortch who can be opposite of Harrison and take advantage of that, it's a win-win for this Cardinals offense. I'm very excited to see. I mean, we've seen Harrison technically in a uniform for media day and pictures and photos, but to see Harrison in a uniform, pads and everything on, and really help transform this offense.
Were you the one who asked Kyler about the trust with Marvin? I can't remember if it was you or not, but somebody asked whether he had to build trust with Marvin. And I thought this was an interesting answer too. He basically was like, no, that's already there. And kind of going by what you were saying, like, I know but he did say that trust could be broken, which I thought was interesting that he put that out for the world to hear, like, yeah, he's got my trust already. Now he can mess this up. But
well, I'll give you an example that comes to mind. All we have to do is go back to the very end of last season at Philadelphia in the 99-yard pick six, where Michael Wilson took ownership after the game that he made a mental error and that he went up to Kyler and sort of apologized and then was thankful that Kyler came back his way. And Michael Wilson, telling it after the game, said, you know what, I thanked him for coming back my way. And then the next day said he texted Kyler that night. Well, and so
in the end, though, let's face it, there's a difference between breaking trust and losing hope after one play. Like, Kyler Murray's going to make some mistakes. If he would ever hold it against a teammate, which I'm not saying he ever would, but if he would hold it after one mental mistake, come on, man. I mean, we're not doing this perfectly.
Well, and then Kyler came into this studio and did a very revealing interview with Ron Wolfley on the Wolf and Luke show. And he was really forthcoming in several areas, talking about being under center. Said he wanted to be under center earlier within the previous regime. And in his words, saying, you know what, at times we might have been a little predictable, and there were tendencies was the word he used. And so it was my desire to be under center more, to keep the defense a little more honest. So that was interesting to hear. And I think it shows that he is, despite the fact that he grew up in the shotgun and literally grew up from like age 5 all the way until the NFL, that he is willing to do what is necessary, what is needed to have the best offense possible. And now you see why. Everyone who questioned whether there would be buy-in from Kyler with the new scheme, Drew Petzing, and everything he wanted to do, you realized, okay, no, that was probably much ado about nothing.
Kyler called his offensive coordinator a genius. I don't think you're saying that if you don't actually mean it. The fact that Kyler had to come in last year in the middle of the season when you're only able to grasp so much of an entirely new scheme, when you're not able to be out there practicing. And then when Kyler was able, to get out there and practice, it's not like he had a lot of time to understand everything that was being asked of him differently, and not just footwork, but the nuances and the calls and feeling comfortable with everything, because at that point you're halfway through the season and you're only able to practice so much, and players are only physically able to give so much in practices. That's hard. So having this full off season, I really do think is going to make a difference. Even if that's just Kyler feeling even more comfortable, having more plays that he prefers in this offense, I think that we are really going to see a difference having this full off season and that extra time. What I also thought was interesting was when Kyler was talking about with with Wolf and Luke about his legs and his ability there, and that he doesn't necessarily want to have an offense that is relying on that all the time. He wants to be in a situation where he's not having to think. And last year, with all the circumstances, when he came in the middle of the season, he was having to think about everything. And he wants to be able to just play and then rely on his legs when he needs to. And that's going to feel more natural. And that's what's going to help elevate this team.
The first thing I thought when he was talking about like that was that, I mean, if you're some fantasy player and you're expecting some 800-yard rushing season from Kyler, I'm thinking probably not. I also am curious if either one of you have seen Drew Petzing yet and asked him what it feels like to be a genius.
I have not seen him yet.
I'm sure he will enjoy that.
Maybe there's some sort of social media thing. You can have fun with that, sort of the whole Matt Damon, Good Will Hunting. We can put him up on a chalkboard. He's solving all the equations.
Do the scene, but just superimpose Drew's face on it? Yeah.
Yeah, why do you do that, Paul?
As I move on and I go back to what you were saying earlier with the and the legs, the way he put it, because I loosely logged the interview here, he said, when you can be yourself, when you don't have to be Superman, which was interesting, right? He said, then you can just let the, quote, freaky stuff happen on its own. It can be organic. Now, that's something we heard from the day he was drafted. He didn't like necessarily having his number called in the run game. He liked to run when he saw opportunity. But what was more interesting about that was he said it's not sustainable.
No.
To just make it's like the old the offense is James Harden. The offense is Allen Iverson. You can't do that in the NFL. The offense isn't Kyler Murray, and too often I think during his first 4 years that was the case.
We saw that at the beginning of the 2021 season. As awesome as that season was, and that 7-0 start, I remember literally sitting in the press box in Tennessee as they whomped the hell out of the Titans and Chandler Jones had his last great game with the Cardinals. And I remember thinking to myself,
5, by the way, a 5-piece.
There is no way this is cool. And, Kyler's throwing multiple touchdown passes and moving all around. He hit Rondale Moore when he should have been sacked. There's no way. This isn't an offense. This is Kyler moving around, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I thought it wasn't sustainable, and in fact, it ended up not being.
That doesn't sound as optimistic as you typically are.
Okay, I walked right into that one. Jeez,
speaking of that era of Cardinals football, how about when Kyler said the narrative has flipped? We used to be a team that was talented, but didn't necessarily play hard or wasn't necessarily well coached, to now we're maybe not quite as talented, but we're a team no one wants to play. Really interesting.
Well, we saw that.
Really telling. And if I'm Dan Quinn, I'm calling in my offensive coordinator, maybe having a conversation about that quote.
And all this.
If you're Dan Quinn and you notice that quote, what the hell? But anyways, go ahead,
Well,
Dani.
to say all the Cardinals have done this offseason is add talent. So, I mean, that was based off what, this team was last year, and all they've done is add talent to this roster.
And that's where the most bullish expectations come, right? Okay, the style of play is there. The scheme is there. Now if you add talent, 1 + 1 + 1 equals 10.
And it's not just the offense that we can expect to see more from. Zaven Collins, the outside linebacker, when he spoke with the media, he said that he and Dennis Gardeck were talking recently out at practice about how there's a lot of new stuff for them. I mean, it was all vanilla in Zaven's terms last year, is just, again, everybody adjusting, coaches as well, to that first year and figuring out what worked and what didn't work. And so I really do expect to see a lot of new pieces to this team, both sides of the ball, as they add more in year 2.
I'm curious, and I don't want to take too hard of a left turn, and we'll get back to your regularly scheduled Cardinals.
By the way,
stuff.
I'm going to buy you a moment to get some water right there, and I'm just going to say, I asked Zaven during the presser that question. I quoted Jim Schwartz, the Browns defensive coordinator, who's in year 2, and his quote was, well, we don't have to work on the fastball. Now we can add other pitches. We can add the curve. And Zaven did not. He did agree with that, to Danny's point. Yeah, okay, the base defense, obviously everyone's got it cold, but going into last season, that might have been all you really had at your disposal, was just the basics.
What I'm curious about, and you guys were mentioning how hard they played at the end of last year, and then they added a bunch of talent. This is more of a vibe of being in the Valley, and now we're talking, I mean, for all due respect to those of you listening outside the Valley, within the Valley, there was expectations for the Phoenix Suns that they did not reach. There are expectations for the Arizona Diamondbacks that they are not reaching. There aren't any expectations for the Coyotes because they're gone. But I'm just wondering, like, it's awesome to kind of have some momentum in that regard, and yet do we get ahead of the skis a little bit at some point?
Well, here would be my counter argument, and I am not a Valley sports expert the way you are, Darren Urban. I didn't grow up here. However, the Diamondbacks and the Suns have been coming off very recent successful seasons. Cardinals have not. Now, you can say parts have been successful. I think talking about the culture change and the fight and the competitiveness of last year, you can call that a success and the turnaround there. But when you look at the record, it's back-to-back 4-win seasons. So I would think that the expectations when you're comparing the Diamondbacks or the Suns to what we're saying the expectations of the Cardinals are different, because everything about this team, this organization, is trending upwards. And you can see it. It's not, we're not just pulling this from thin air. You can see it in the energy, the way that this team is practicing, the way that they are talking about each other and about them as individuals when talking to the media, and all of those things. And again, the fact that when all these practices were voluntary, it was essentially full participation. I think you can piece all those parts together, and it really does make sense to have high expectations. Again, I've said this before, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm expecting a 10 or 12 win season, but I think to have higher expectations is fair for this team.
Well, and I'll just say that I don't know what it means in the win total, but seeing what we saw the last month, 6 weeks, that team and what they were doing, even without eventually the wins have to come, that's bottom line, but seeing what that team was doing, that's energizing to a fan base, I would think.
I would also say that every year at this time, every team is over its skis with expectation. It's sort of the way it works.
Well, that's why I do
honestly.
And this is not just Cardinals, but being online and seeing other teams have press conferences. I love it when I see a coach or a player and it's always, this is the best offseason I've ever had in my career.
Sure.
I love that. I'm not going to say which team it was, but there was a coach, and it was not the Cardinals. It was a different team, and the coach was saying it was the best offseason he'd had with his quarterback, and never, they hadn't been to levels, the two of them. And I'm just like, what else? I know the question, I guess, has to get asked, but what else do you expect him to say? Like, I don't know, this time last year, they looked a little more locked in, a little more in shape. So, we've got a ways to go. There's like, no, you're not going to say that.
There's nothing else you can say, though, between it's the greatest offseason we've ever had, and
so this is the best my body's ever fit. Yeah.
Well, guys, they're all vying for the Rex Ryan Award, the hardware we hand out every year for winning the offseason, so you can't blame them.
See, you said that, and the second time you just brought this up, I still did not think that's where you were going with that. That's twice now. You've got me.
I see.
I just know that as the years go by, my body never feels better than next year. It's a declining situation.
Right. I mean, even Carolina thinks it has a chance this year. FYI, they don't. But there's also just the nature of the NFL. I don't have it right in front of me, but every season since 1990, there have been 4 new playoff teams in the NFL. And like 18 of the last 20 years, there's been at least one team that's gone worst to first. So the NFL, more than any other league, brings hope every season that you can be one of those teams to change the script. I mean, right now, talk about over your skis. I'm about to do a header off a triple black diamond. I have the Houston Texans winning the Super Bowl over the Green Bay Packers. So that's my prediction right here, right now.
I don't know if that's really that crazy.
Maybe not.
I don't think it's going to happen.
You've definitely had hotter takes. Let's just say that.
This is true. I don't even know if that would fit in his top 10 of hot takes.
Well, don't worry. I have a few coming, and a little bit later in this edition of Cardinals Underground, brought to you by Pacific Office Automation. A little bit later, we'll get into some of that. By the way, you guys need a rant around here. Where was the rant that I was going to throw out there? Because 'tis the season for all the lists, right? Actually, I'll start with one that I think we'll start with the one where the Cardinals finally get some respect in a list. NFL.com, they listed the rankings of the rookie and veteran combinations, QB and wide receiver, where one component is a rookie, the other is a veteran, whether it's the quarterback or the receiver.
That's awful specific there, Paul.
Number 1, Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison Jr. And then
Chicago's got to be on there, right?
Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, number 2. Josh Allen, Keon Coleman, number 3. J.J. McCarthy, Justin Jefferson, number 4. By the way, I did not realize Justin Jefferson, over the last 4 games without Kirk Cousins, he had a game where he went for 140 yards, another game where he went for 170 yards. I did not realize that. And then number 5, Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin.
You need to go back to 2011 and watch Fitz's games, and then you'll be like, oh, yeah, that does happen.
That's right. So in the very rare instances, you're right, a receiver can make a quarterback. But 9 times out of 10, not the case.
There's a difference between the receiver putting up big stats with a lesser quarterback and winning games out of it. The Vikings weren't winning.
Yeah.
And the 2011 Cardinals didn't get to do much either.
Okay, so here's my rant, okay? NFL.com, 10 rookies in the most favorable positions to succeed in year 1 and beyond. Danny, your choice. Say it again. Who's the quarterback for Chicago?
Caleb Williams.
Number 1. Xavier Worthy. Number 2.
Why does that make you surprised? You said that like you're surprised.
Well, because you're going to be the number 3 option at best with the Kansas City Chiefs.
It didn't say you're going to put up 1,000 yards. It said who's in the most favorable position.
Most favorable position to succeed. But if you're the number 3 target at best, I'm getting to my point. Then they go to Joe Alt, number 3. Okay, I get this. Who else here? They have Rome Odunze, number 6. Really? Rome Odunze when he's got Keenan Allen and DJ Moore ahead of him? The point I'm making here, Marvin Harrison Jr. is not on this list. Most favorable positions to succeed when he's going to be wide receiver 1 from the get-go.
Okay, I feel
with
like
a quarterback who's got an accurate, strong arm.
I feel like you're equating favorable position to succeed and putting up astronomical numbers is equal, and I don't see that.
No, that's exactly my point. I don't know what Marvin Harrison is going to do, but right now when you're automatically wide receiver 1 from day one versus Xavier Worthy and Rome Odunze, who are wide receiver 3.
I get you where you're Odunze. I don't care if they're wide receiver 1, 2, or 3. I think Worthy should be higher than Marvin Harrison because he's got Patrick Mahomes throwing to him.
Yeah, well, I respectfully disagree. I mean,
Figures.
if it was Patrick Mahomes versus Bryce Young, sorry to bag on Carolina, but then
you're doing a lot. That's a lot.
Then the difference would be so vast that I would agree with you. But in this case, not so much.
I think Rome Odunze is an interesting one because he's currently 3rd on the depth chart and also has a rookie quarterback. Look, you can say, how realistic it is for Caleb Williams to carry over the success from college into the pros, right? First overall pick, all that stuff. I still think it's hard to say what kind of projection he'll have with a rookie QB for a couple years. I mean, think of how many quarterbacks are so great in college, and whether it's coaching or the organization or them as a player, and there's a reason something doesn't work out.
Bryce Young.
Right. It just kind of seems interesting that Odunze would be on there given the situation with Williams.
I'm a little surprised Harrison's not on the list. I will give you that, Paul.
Okay. So the Bears.
You should just start making your own list, Paul.
The Bears.
Oh, he'll make his own list.
The Bears are on the home schedule. The Lions are on the home schedule week 3 with Detroit, right?
I believe so, yes.
So Dan Campbell had the quote of the week, in our opinion, when he told the media, quote, "We know what it says on paper, but we can't do the Ron Burgundy. We can't just continue to read off the teleprompter." Meaning you just can't.
Stay classy, San Diego?
You just can't do the same thing over and over and sort of go through the motions and read the prompter, that you have to grow defensively, offensively. Dan Campbell, we have to get better. We just can't show up and read off the prompter.
Have either of you guys ever actually, for real, worked off a prompter?
For years.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Not nearly as long as Paul. I didn't love it, but when I was working in a newsroom, yes.
Did you ever get messed with, Paul?
No, but my famous story with the teleprompter was...
this is going to be good.
My first gig, Medford, Oregon, big market 149. There you go. Weekend sports anchor, and we used to watch the other 2 stations, and they would watch us, and everyone would rate each other, and you're 22 years old, and most everyone's nervous as all get out. You're on the air. Well,
boom goes the dynamite.
Exactly. A lot of those. Okay. There was a guy who did the live shot who was a one-man band live shot, and he locked down his camera, except he didn't lock it down. So it was at a monster truck race when the truck roared by and it was like an earthquake. And so the whole camera fell over on live TV.
Oh,
and he tried to get in front of it and finish the live shot. It was just an absolute disaster because somebody back at the station wasn't switching it. But in this case, you would run your own prompter with a foot pedal, our competitor.
Wow.
Not you, your competitor.
We at least had a teleprompter operator
Right.
who came in, some college intern. And the disasters that would unfold by people who were so locked into the prompter, and they would get nervous and they'd step on it like they're accelerating under the freeway and right in front of them. And then they still had 2.5 minutes to kill on a sportscast, and they had nothing. Because back then, it was paper getting fed through a projector. You had nothing. And so, yes, that was highly entertaining. If only it only was the video age back then of social media, it would that would live in infamy. Like boom goes the dynamite, no doubt. So where were we exactly on this front?
I don't know. I was enjoying that story.
I was ranting about that list.
Marvin
right there.
Harrison and
The list season needs to stop. That's the best thing about training camp. Then we're done with the list season.
Yeah, but it's June and July. That's all that happens right now is lists.
That's right.
You know who reads all the lists? Paul Calvisi, as he's proven on a weekly basis.
You got to take issue with something over here, okay?
You know what really grinds my gears?
Yeah, okay. By the way, Mina Kimes, really bullish on the Arizona Cardinals. Is that because she's so familiar with the NFC West, being a Seahawks honk? Is that why?
Now, I will say this. When I have seen her, I'm not saying that she's super bullish on the overall team, but she does definitely seem to really like the running game that they put together and what Drew Petzing has done with the running game. And I think that is fair for a running game that was top 5. And it goes back to what you were saying before, which is with what they've built, I don't know if you need – I mean, a few years ago, if you would have said this team was a really awesome running team, it would be in large part because Kyler was doing Justin Fields, Lamar Jackson type things. And that's just not the case. And yet they're still running for a ton of yards.
And that's what Kyler also mentioned in that interview with Arizona Sports, that when he's under center, it does keep a defense honest, that it's not as easy to discern what's coming a defense's way. And remember, we've had a number of defensive linemen say over the years, most notably Zach Allen before he went to Denver, saying that when it's 3rd and 2 and a team gets into the gun, he loves it because it wipes out half the playbook. He doesn't have to consider half the things that you typically would coming your way as a defensive lineman. So I get it. I get with what Kyler's talking about in that regard. But just the way in which he met the media last week, and again, he was really affable. He was really encouraged.
Kyler, not Zach Allen.
And Ron Wolfley, yes. And Ron Wolfley and I had this conversation. Okay, what do you attribute it to? Do you attribute it to this natural maturation, which were his words, right? I think you used that off the top of your article on azcardinals.com.
Well, because I asked him kind of where he was kind of mentally with everything. And he it was funny. I was going just with being happy. And he took it right to the maturation part, which I thought was kind of interesting just because I feel like if we as the media, quote unquote, had brought that up a couple years ago, I think he would have gotten a little defensive about that. About that he's in the middle of a maturation process and it's still happening. But now he seems to kind of acknowledge that, oh, yeah, that kind of happened.
Well, do you think there's cause and effect, though? For example, season-ending knee injury. First major injury of his football career. Do you think that sort of reset things for him, made him appreciate the game more, his place in the game a little more? You lose something for the first time that you value that much, it's got to hit the reset button maybe on your perspective.
I know for a fact that there are people close to Kyler that felt like, as horrible as it was, not that they wished it on him, but that you could easily get a silver lining out of it, that he had never really faced adversity and this was going to kind of help him understand how he could lose something.
He's also just getting older. I think it's something
Join
that
the club, baby.
You have to remind yourself of these rookies are coming out of college, some of them 21 years old, and that just takes time for anyone. And then you throw in everything else they're doing for their job and the money and all that stuff. I do think to a certain extent, like, this just kind of happens with age. I would think, though, the time that Kyler spent not away or by himself, he was very much around the facility when he was rehabbing and all of that last year. But I think it also probably ties into what he was mentioning in the press conference about being one of the older players in the locker room. Darren, you included an article. This is the first time Kyler has not been the youngest quarterback in the room, right? And you look around at all the veterans. And I know that we've heard from players about how Kyler might be one of the more soft-spoken type of leaders, but is leading that locker room. And I think you look in the past of the big personalities that were handling a lot of that leadership in the locker room. And I would imagine that with all the change on a personal level and how that plays into to Kyler and his career, and then the professional level in terms of looking at all the changes within this building, it seems like Kyler has really come to the understanding of this is the time I've got to step up, right? This is when I really have to step up as a leader in multiple aspects. And he's really been doing that.
I think of what you just said, Paul, about the injury being the reset. I think in a lot of ways, and you don't want to have it go that way for a lot of reasons, but I think he needed the team to reset. I think he needed players to leave. I think he needed coach to leave. I think he needed that reset if he was going to be your quarterback. And I think that's a big part of it too. It's funny, he called Drew Petzing a genius, and Drew, I'm telling you right now, I'm sure you're absolutely a genius. But on the NFL level, I mean, Kyler's had two guys. It's Cliff and Drew. So, you know, I don't know if he's a genius, but he's obviously Kyler fits with what he's doing a lot better. And that's all you can ask for. And that's why I think it's kind of funny sometimes when people keep talking about how they need to move on from Kyler. I'm like, how would you know that? Like, I would, forgetting the situation they're in aside, I would be pained to not see what Kyler could do in a full year and a full offseason in this offense and what it could be. I would die of curiosity.
That's the other component
My
that
voice
I want.
just cracked.
That I want. When Peter Brady, another reference that Danny doesn't understand. So then you have the other aspect of it, and that is, guess what? If you're not on board, then you're off the roster. Get on or get out. And when the team got rid of Isaiah Simmons at the end of training camp for a 7th-round pick, former number 8 pick overall, and then slowly but surely made other significant cuts, Marco Wilsons of the world, and parted ways with different guys.
Zach
Ertz. When Kyler Murray sees Baker Mayfield, cut, right? Very close with Bake, and a guy who was Heisman winner, number 1 pick overall. All these things happen, and I think maybe Kyler realized, guess what? It can unravel. It can dissolve in a hurry, even if you're a number 1 pick overall. So to me, I think that's all part of it, perhaps. But when Darren put in his article that there are 4 and only 4 teammates on this roster since his selection in 2019, his rookie campaign, for bonus points, Red Sea, can you name the 4? I have it in front of me.
Players that were here in 2019.
2019. Still with Kyler.
I think I actually know Buda Baker, Dennis Gardeck. Oh, Aaron Brewer.
Yep.
Oh, that's only 3, right? I'm missing one more?
There's one more. And I would not have gotten this one either because I didn't realize, but he must have been a rookie in 19 as well. Was he the supplemental pick 5th round in 19?
Oh, is this Jalen Thompson?
Yes.
Oh.
Good one. Yeah. So those are yeah.
Now, also note that especially when you have a coaching change, to have that kind of turnover in a 5-year NFL period is not really that crazy. I mean, you'd like to have more people over, but I think if you go back to a couple of the times when they've had coaching changes here and you look 5 years down the road, that tends to happen.
Keep in mind, though, in the 4 draft classes just prior to Monty Ossenfort, 2019, 20, 21, and 22, there were 32 draft picks, only 6 remain.
Yeah, that's not good.
So there's been a lot of turnover. And you can't tell me that Kyler doesn't see that as well and realize, guess what? Even as a number 1 pick overall, even with 2 Pro Bowls on my resume, you either produce or they'll find someone else. And so I think all that has factored in. He joked about how he's been here virtually every single day. And it hasn't been rehabbing.
No. Although he did say that that's an ongoing process. I did know. I asked him about that.
That was interesting, yeah.
Because he was in right away, and I'm like, and he's doing stuff with Buddy, and he did note that the knee continues to get some, I don't want to say extra work, but you got to continue to know that happened once upon a time and continue to work on it.
See, that didn't strike me as odd.
I'm not saying it's odd.
Because in any I feel like with any body part that you have surgery on, you continue. I mean, whether you call it rehab or not, you pay a little bit more attention to it of figuring out what hurts and just weather affected and maybe adding in some more stretching. Like, so that didn't necessarily strike me as, ooh, is he not 100%? Is he not going to ever go? Like that to me, I understand the question and what you're saying, but that did not concern me at all to hear that.
No, and I, again, for whatever reason, he is around all the time. Now, I think this team has done a very nice job with some of their higher profile players of inserting certain clauses in their contract that pay them, some of these players, a good chunk of money to do the offseason work. And I'm sure that is partly the motivation for the Kylers and the Buddhas, among others. But still, they're here.
And so are we, just for the record.
Did you get a bonus for being here?
The bonus is just being here, Darren.
And going into this mandatory minicamp, if you had to give me one quote, and one quote only, from the recent offseason that I can sink my teeth into, it's when Jonathan Gannon said about Kyler Murray, quote, "It's kind of eye-popping, the kind of command that he has on the practice field. The defense knows they better be ready to roll or they will get diced. And I love the versatility and the way we play multiple ways on offense." So, once again, it's just that sort of command that I don't think Kyler really had till the final month of last season. And then to be able to build on that and then build the chemistry. I used to always dismiss the offseason chemistry with the receivers until Drew Stanton sat in that chair over a year ago and pretty much ripped me from head to toe about what are you talking about. It's vital, the quarterback-receiver chemistry that you build in the offseason in some of these practices. So, okay, duly noted by yours truly. And look, it was a challenge last year. I mean, far greater. And I tried to think of a way to ask that question to Kyler. Just now that you're removed from last season, what was the degree of difficulty just showing up mid-season, no training camp? Everyone else is playing regular season game speed, and you just have to jump in.
Well, and this isn't answer your question anywhere close to fully, but just on the knee part of it, he acknowledged there were times when his knee was more sore than he was expecting, or he didn't have the flexion and the ability to bend it as much as he was expecting after a game, and that was something he was dealing with, and that's just with the knee itself. That has nothing to do with any of the other, quite frankly, more important things that you would be dealing with as a starting quarterback.
By the way, did you see where we're keeping track of the Colts because Cardinals are going there for the joint practice in the preseason game? Anthony Richardson had to come out of their final minicamp practice because of a sore throwing shoulder, which was surgically repaired in the offseason.
What was the list you saw him on, though?
Oh, there was a CBS Sports.
Right, he played like 4 games.
Why are you gaslighting him with lists?
Because I'm not gaslighting.
Top
Do I need to explain what gaslighting means to you, Darren?
MVP candidates, and Anthony Richardson is 8th? I mean, come on. I mean, he showed a little promise, but there were 3 games he didn't even finish in those 5 games that he played before he had the season-ending shoulder injury.
Know. Was Kyler on that list?
No, he was like 17th or something. So
wait, how big was this list?
Well, it went through the top 10, and then later, like he filled in the other, So, yeah, that's the kind of stuff in the off season.
I'm waiting for the Paul Calvisi book of lists.
By the way, the beat writer for the Colts then listed the backup quarterbacks for the Colts. Okay,
I don't even know who they are.
Yeah, I was going to say
Joe Flacco. Actually, is
really?
on the roster.
I don't remember that.
We're going to get to see Joe Flacco.
I did not. Sam Ellinger from Texas.
Right.
Okay.
And the last one, Darren, for bonus points here, because you follow the local high school scene. Former Scottsdale Desert Mountain quarterback who went to USC, former pupil of Kurt Warner when Kurt Warner was the OC at Desert Mountain. He also then ended up transferring like 4 times to 4 different schools. Keaton Slovis. Who, by the way, the Colts beat writer...
Didn't he start against ASU one game, I think?
The Colts beat writer had him listed as Keaton Clovis with a C. No, it's Slovis. So anyway, you'll see him. You can talk.
Why don't you let him know that when we see him at joint practice?
That's right.
Hey, I saw this typo a couple months ago. I just wanted to let you know.
So there you go on that front. Anything else I needed, since I'm always the last to find out, anything else I need to know about the preseason, the training camp that you guys are in the know about that I'll only find out later? Anything else?
I mean, you know about Indianapolis, Paul, so I don't know where else we can go.
Okay, all right.
I'm just excited for Darren to get a little break, a little vacation. He deserves it.
What's Darren willing to divulge about his vacation plans?
I pray that I'm not sick while I'm on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved that. There was a comment, I think on YouTube or maybe someone listening on Apple or, Spotify, wherever, of not seeing the video of maybe Darren popping cough drops every 10 minutes. But someone made a comment about Darren's voice sounding different, how much better he sounded. And no offense to you, Darren, this guy's been hacking up a lung the last 2 weeks. So that's why he sounds so different.
Yeah.
He's trying to stay alive over here.
Haven't had a good night's sleep in a week and a half.
He's chugging these water bottles like crazy.
And no doctor could tell me what it is.
Darren sounds like he's starting an infomercial right now for some sort of cold remedy that is out on the market. My goodness. Okay.
So I loved
Paul's
that.
willing to sit next to me.
I loved that
Yeah.
someone loved the way your voice sounds because you've been so sick.
Yeah. So maybe we should, in haste, get out of the studio before we get sick. So I'll wrap it up. This would be my segue. Down the stretch we come. Any other great takeaways now that the offseason work is ending? In summation of offseason 2024, what would you say about what you saw, what you heard? Darren, you're going to have a margarita out on the beach, and maybe football might float into your mind occasionally. What do you think will come to mind?
I mean, I think I come back to a lot of what we've touched on today. In the bigger picture, I'm like, it's been a long time since I feel like this team has felt like it does right now in terms of the arrow pointing up in the right way with some foundation under it. Now, again, we'll see what happens when we actually get to games. On a recent mailbag, somebody asked me, have any of the draft picks from third round and beyond, further down, stood out? I'm like, no. I mean, one, we can't even report on most of the practices we've seen. But more importantly, right now isn't going to tell you much. Let's see what we get in camp. But I do think I'm very excited to go to camp to see some of those things, to see some of those rookies, to see not only whether Marvin is all that in a bag of chips, but also what some of the rest of this draft class, how impactful they will be right away.
The energy has been high. I think about standing inches away from the D-line out at these practices and just seeing the energy. And I don't just mean they're jumping around and dancing music and have a good time. I'm talking about the energy as they're going through drills. The energy is when they pair up, people like Bilal Nichols and Justin Jones going at it and hyping each other up and letting each other know what they did well and what they could be better at, and watching Dante Stills in year 2 really kind of come into his own, and Ben Stilley coaching up Darius Robinson, the rookie out there. I mean, you really can feel that this team is becoming more formidable.
Yeah, in terms of the football side of it, the X's and O's, I would start with the D-line. It's such a marked difference from a year ago. Just fair. When you stand out there, oh my goodness, okay, there's a before and after here, the D-line. Now, beyond that, just sort of the ethereal, the vibe, the feeling you get. We've all been around teams that believed in what they had in the locker room. Players know players. Players know if they're going to have a chance to compete. Players know if you have a chance to win. And those are two different things. I think a year ago, minus Kyler Murray, okay, we're going to compete. Not sure what the ultimate confidence level was you were going to be able to win. I do get the sense this team's looking at each other saying, hey, guys, we got enough to win.
And I don't believe in momentum at all. Not when there's so much time.
Certainly not one season to the next.
But I believe in what they showed on the field with this coaching staff absolutely can be duplicated going forward, and I believe it will be. And I think that also, along with everything else, makes a big difference.
To me, that's not momentum, that's confidence. And I absolutely think that carries over.
And there are certain things that carry over every week. Look, you're not going to have your best passing game or, your best in terms of the skill sets and so forth. It might vary, but the physicality carries over week to week. If you're bringing that sort of effort, urgency, intensity.
The expectation, the standards that are set, 100%.
So at the very least, you can count on that. And we saw that when there was nothing to play for in December and January. Cardinals went in and were the more physical team in Pittsburgh, the more physical team against Philadelphia. Heck, I venture to say they were the more physical team. That rematch with the 49ers when they ran for over 200 yards. Just the Niners have such a ridiculous amount of skill that was the difference in the game. So, but we'll know right away. You'll know out of the gates at Buffalo. You'll know in week 2 against the nemesis, Sean McVay. You're going to get an answer right away, which I think is equally as compelling. So, all right. What else? Anything else here, Darren?
That's it.
Okay. The media day. What looks like it was clockwork from all the players.
Dani ran it perfectly.
Okay.
So much so that I am ready for a nap. Early morning.
Yeah. Okay. All right. There you go. Mandatory minicamp this week, and then let there be an off season. On Cardinals Underground, brought to you by Pacific Office Automation.